Hey everybody, Misty Williams here from Healing Rosie, and I'm really excited about the conversation that I'm about to have here with Jeremy from Biocanic. I met Jeremy at PaleoFX this year during a talk that I gave about lab hacking, basically for women. Like, what does it take as a woman to really get to the bottom of what your issues are? And many of you know that when my journey started in 2012, one of the early things that I did to start helping me get traction and figure out what was actually going on is dive into the world of lab work. When you become part of this community, you're able to download the Healing Rosie lab tracker. And in that tracker, I actually list for you the optimizing labs, what the functional lab ranges are for those labs, and what it might mean if your labs are low or if your labs are high. And this tool for me started helping me to really dig in and get to the bottom of what was actually going on in my body. And when women come into our community and are struggling with symptoms, the thing that you guys hear me say consistently is you need to get your lab work done. You need to figure out what's actually going on in your body. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You know, some people are really blessed and fortunate to be working with a doctor or practitioner who is really generous about ordering labs and loves having patients who are coming alongside saying, hey, here's the labs I need, you know, please run these labs for me. Some people are really blessed to have a doctor that says, hey, I know that you need all these labs plus a whole bunch more, and we're going to run this and get to the bottom of what's going on. But for many of us, the experience is actually very, very different. We are dealing with doctors who don't want to acknowledge that our symptoms are actually a problem that needs to be fixed. We're hearing a lot of times that what we're experiencing is just a normal part of aging, that we just need to live with it, that it's normal and fine. We are hearing that the whole idea of running labs and the whole idea of functional medicine is not evidence-based, which actually isn't true either. And we find ourselves really fighting a lot, advocating hard, trying to figure out what do we need to do. And what a lot of people will do is they'll go to their doctor and they'll beat their head against the wall with that doctor and try to get that doctor or practitioner to order the labs. And what I tell the women in our community to do is, number one, find someone that wants to order those labs for you already and is predisposed to being a partner with you. Or two, go get the labs run yourself. What happened for me though, when I got my labs, I remember the first time I looked at my labs and was like, I got all the labs I was supposed to get, and I have no idea what any of this means. And so I really love what Jeremy is doing with his new company, because he is really supporting us in being able to take this data and information and uncover patterns and uncover gems that might help us really get to the bottom of what's happening. And I'm excited for you guys to meet him today and learn what he's been up to and what he's been developing that can support all of us in this community, but also the people in our space that he's working with, because I really love the approach he's taking to growing this company. And I think that we're going to find not only does he really relate to what we've dealt with because of his own health journey, but he's really committed to doing something about it that is going to make a difference for all of us. So Jeremy, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm totally excited to have you on, and I've been excited about your project since the minute you told me about it. Yeah. So why don't you just start off with telling us a little bit about your own health journey? I know that you have dealt with what a lot of us in the Healing Rosie community have dealt with the weight gain and the energy dropping and our bodies just not functioning like we know they're capable of. So unpack a little bit what happened for you.
Yeah, so my personal health journey, I say 2016, but obviously started years before that. But as a male entering, 40 years old, I was starting to see progressive weight gain, afternoon headaches, fatigue. But I think for me, what was the real problem, and I think what your community also struggles as well, is I felt like I didn't have control anymore. Everything that I used to try and do that would show results, periodic calorie restrictions, working out more, alcohol-free months, all of a sudden wasn't working anymore. And in fact, and oftentimes it was having the opposite effect.
Right.
It was really frustrating for me. And like your community, went to my general practitioner who really didn't have anything to offer, eat less, move more, which we know isn't a sustainable outcome, approach. And then, exploring low T, and I'll come back to that because that's important as I got my own diagnostic information back. But for me, I was lucky enough to have my wife, who is actually a functional health practitioner. And she was actually beginning the first part of her certification process. And so I was able to actually take on quite a bit of the functional lab testing that is now generally available to consumers today. And so in 2016, I really got a lot of insight relative to gut dysbiosis, hormone issues, blood-related issues. So I actually had recurrent H. pylori, I had C. diff, and I had cryptosporidium, right? So great. I went in, started doing a whole bunch of gut healing protocols, which was great because my gut was healed, but I still wasn't seeing the results that I needed to see. And then so we went through some progressive testing and, going through different protocols and supplements. And the reality was I actually was pre-diabetic. And so my hormone dysregulation, my cortisol dysregulation was all stemming from my high blood sugar. And I had no insight into that until we actually got a functional lab test back called the Dutch test, which some of your community may be familiar with. And the medical practitioner at that point said, have you ever considered blood sugar interventions? Because on that particular test, I was showing the estrogen metabolite pathways for the pro-cancer pathways as being elevated and well outside the range. And so for me, that aha moment, a couple years in after quite a bit of testing and everything, was transformational for me. So I made dietary adjustments, did things like paleo, low carb, keto, was tracking my blood sugar, my ketones, and then was able to correlate it back to all of the things that I had issues with, and I saw an immediate step change. And so what really occurred to me, one, was the importance of data and really getting the objective information, because before then I was what I called, caught in a cycle of trial and error, chasing down different things, fad diets, supplements, all of this weird stuff that was having no effect because it really wasn't affecting the root of the issue. But for me, getting to the results that I wanted faster would have been a huge win for me. And I think where I really saw the opportunity, my background being engineering in the medical device and the medical software space, was there really isn't a place for consumers who want to take active control of their health and really make sense of their own physiology, their own metabolism, correlate it with the objective data to really understand what is going to be the right path for me at that moment in time. And I think that's really where we built the Biocanic platform for consumers to be able to bring in all this data and help make sense of that.
Yeah. So I love that you've partnered with Reed Davis over at Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And I want to just tell a little bit about my background with FDN, because when I knew that I was launching Healing Rosie, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was at PaleoFX, and in my mind, I was thinking, so many of these health coaching programs are not based in running your labs and really figuring out what's going on. And I am not going to feel comfortable recommending health coaches that don't really understand how to get to the bottom of an issue, or what it's like to take a patient down the path of testing, seeing what's really going on, and then prescribing a protocol from there. So when I went by his booth, somehow I got in a conversation with one of his practitioners and was like, wait a minute, you guys actually run the labs and your coaches, and you've really figured this lab piece out and how to marry what's in the labs to protocols that, are designed to help people get right. better. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, and you're not doctors, and you don't have to be a licensed practitioner in order to take this program. You just have to care about this piece of it. And they're like, yeah. And I was just blown away in the most ecstatic way, because finally there's health coaches who are all about what, from my own experience, is the most fundamental part of really getting on top of your healing journey. And that is using the labs to diagnose what's going on in your body. So I was super excited, and I love Reed. We've actually talked about putting together a program for women in our community to go through, where they get a whole bunch of the major lab tests done. And then we work with a practitioner for about 90 days to really move the needle. And then, of course, they have the option of continuing on in that program if they'd like to. But
yeah, I'll give you a perfect example of my own situation. So I'm pre-diabetic, right? So I'm eating too many carbs. The natural response that if you open CNN.com right now, I'm sure there's an article on the keto diet. Well, the reality of the keto diet and any of the recipes that you see is heavily dairy-based. You have sour cream, heavy cream, everything else. Well, without the lab testing data, I wouldn't have known that I'm actually sensitive to cow's milk. So going straight onto a keto diet is not my answer for my own physiology. I actually needed to move something further away from dairy, yet low carb, which doesn't really sit within the exact thing, right? And so I could have easily gone down a pathway of this kind of one size fits all approach, yet it would have been ineffective because I lacked the key information for what my own physiology needs.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't you just talk to us a little bit about your partnership with FDN? Because what's significant about this to me is you're partnering with some of the premier coaches in our space. I'm even comparing these to the doctors in our space. Like I think a lot of these FDN practitioners know more than a lot of our functional medicine doctors.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to the labs and stuff. So why don't you talk to us about the program that you've put together for FDN and where you're taking this long-term?
Yeah. So we're absolutely, we're partnered with the FDNs today, and that's because they do use the diagnostic information to drive diet, lifestyle, interventions that actually work, but it's tuned based upon what the lab data is telling you and where to focus. And so the challenge that the FDNs had before the Biocanic platform, it was a lot of PDF sharing through, Dropbox or Google Drive or emailing, which is not good. There wasn't an easy way to track your information. So let's say you want to track your weight on a daily basis and your vegetable consumption as a part of your program. That was hard to have that accountability. And then there was information sharing in terms of, breathing exercises, meditation routines, and it was always very disparate and very challenging for the FDNs. And so what happens for them is it becomes very time consuming to look at 3 different labs, put together a protocol, write up a Word document, send you a spreadsheet to fill out your questionnaires, and then aggregate all that information back into something that's tangible and meaningful for the client to do that. And that's really where we saw an opportunity, was to leverage technology, both to make it easier and faster for the FDN practitioner to drive real results, but also for the client to be able to stay focused on what's important and what they're working on in that moment. Because diet, lifestyle, supplementation, food changes, exercise changes can be all very overwhelming, especially all at once.
Yeah.
Having that information in a single location, and then also having the ability to look backwards. A lot of times if we think, say, our migraines are 9 out of 10 and we get to a 6 out of 10, we think, oh, we're healed. But 6 out of 10 for migraines is still really bad. So it's important to always look back and have that backwards looking, say, yes, I'm making progress. I am on the right pathway and I want to continue to go. And so that's really what the platform is all about, which is enabling a more frictionless experience for clients to get the results that they're going for.
Yeah. So your FDN practitioners began using this with their clients, and can you tell us any success stories, like what's been happening in their experience? And then how are you using these insights to update the software? Because it seems like you're sending out new releases all the time.
Yeah. So we're still very early phase. So we have had a lot of really good feedback, because the accountability for clients between sessions, obviously you're not meeting with your health coach on a daily basis. You're mainly weekly or biweekly. And so the ability to track your progress in between sessions has really been huge. And so the accountability and being able to watch improvements or changes, or even seeing how my poor diet change on a Saturday affected my weight on a Monday, is a very valuable insight, because now people are starting to feel control and take control of those levers because they have that objective data insight. On the data side, we're still early. And that's one of the things that, Reed and his community have done a lot of really good work in terms of driving great outcomes, but they haven't brought the data together to be able to really show how this is affecting, positive health and wellness outcomes. And that's really our goal. So we're in the early phases of where we're just bringing all that data together to start looking at how do phenotypes exist. Some things work really well for some people, but that's based upon, say, common metabolic function that may not be appropriate for you or the next individual. And so we're really in that aggregation phase of being able to stratify people by metabolic type to help them really drive those interventions. So that's really the early part. In a future state, what we'll be doing is looking at how do we leverage the data to really drive very precise interventions for the individual. So for example, if I'm 42, complaining of gas, pain, and bloating after eating, recent weight gain with sleep issues, and I happen to have a gut pathogen or a hormone issue, this is what's worked for everybody else early. So I'm not caught in the cycle of trial and error and using different approaches that aren't going to be effective for my individual goals.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. So talk to us about the upcoming releases. I know you've got some plans over the next few months for what you're going to do with the software.
Yeah, so today, we'll show you an example of where we're at today. We're doing some of the assessment surveys that are used from some of the original kind of functional health approaches that we've actually automated into the system. And then our next release will actually be implementing the functional blood chemistry analysis. So everything that you see in the spreadsheet, you'll be able to keep and update within this platform, but you'll also be able to keep it next to any other testing that you have there as well. So that's our next release. And then the follow-on will really be driving the insights. A lot of times with some of the lab tests, and I'm sure your community has struggled with this as well, is you'll get a single value or a single out-of-range value from a particular test, but it doesn't look across the rest of the physiology to really help you understand, now, what do I actually do with that, right? And so we'll be connecting the dots to saying, look, if we see, let's say, a melatonin or a hormone dysregulation with some underlying gut dysbiosis or leaky gut corresponding with some food sensitivities, we'll actually be able to drive insights and say, hey, look, based upon what we've seen for individuals like you, we've seen that this X, Y, or Z response has a positive impact 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. And so those are the next coming releases over the summer.
That's amazing. So why don't you go ahead and just give us a little demonstration here. I'd love for everyone to actually see what this software looks like, what the dashboard looks like, and the kind of data that you can track.
Yep. So hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah.
So this is the main dashboard. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to consolidate it into a single view. So up top, we have what are called health trackers. And health trackers are really anything that you want to track. So today, I track quite a few things. You certainly don't need to be like me and a data geek and track everything. But even things like weight, body fat, I add my Oura Ring sleep score here. I look at things like my Precision Extra glucose and ketones or my sleep interruptions. But we can do things as simple as vegetable intake, our coffee consumption, and, I use another device called Keto. But what this really does is this helps objectify what you're doing and making changes. A lot of times we'll say, okay, you know what, I need to be gluten-free. So I'll just create a tracker that says, did I avoid gluten today or not? Then also have a tracker saying, well, how is my brain fog today? Then after a few days, I can say, look, well, I can tell that the days that I'm consuming gluten, I have higher brain fog, or maybe that's not my problem. But because I'm actually tracking it, I now have the ability to see where the things are correlating and where they're not. And right. This again is the accountability aspect. So, for your community, if they're looking at different types of symptoms, be it hot flashes, hair loss, weight gain, whatever it is, you can now track it very easily alongside other things that you have of interest as well.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is, I'm thinking from my own perspective, like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm thinking about some of the trackers that I'm using and wondering if those trackers would actually marry in with this. Can you tell us about what kind of API you have, or what, how friendly is this for taking data from other places and pulling it into your system?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously this is my Oura Ring sleep score. We're actually in the process of building that integration. We're also looking at Fitbit as well. A lot of this, with the way the technology is built today, is very easy for us to do. So we're just waiting for user feedback to tell us who to integrate with and when, and it's actually fairly simple nowadays with all of the different integrations. So we can, we can do, pretty much anything.
Yeah, I'm thinking of MyFitnessPal is a really popular tracker that I hear a lot of people using, and there's a couple of sleep apps that I have used in the past. The one I'm currently using is called Sleep Score. Have you heard of it?
Yes, I'm very familiar with Sleep Score.
Yeah, Sleep Score is the app that I've been using lately. And I've too been toying with the Oura Ring idea. Should I pull the trigger on that or not? So we'll see. But
yeah, it's interesting. Sleep Score is a really great product. They all have their benefits and drawbacks, but really for us, it's just how do we get the data so that people can see it in a single screen.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so people are inputting their data, and then what happens?
So we have the ability to store information here. Again, we're really partnered with functional diagnostic nutrition practitioners. So if there's information they want to share back and forth, they have the ability to do that. Or even if just keeping and running a record. So for for my own particular health, on March 29th, I listened to a podcast with Chris Masterjohn. Based upon my MTHFR SNPs, I have reduced methylation. So I actually made diet changes relative to that. So I actually kind of memorialize that as a part of the document. And then I can look back and see how that's affected my health and well-being. So this is just really just a basic note storage information. And then what we have is the client functional summary. And I'll come back to that in a second. But really what we do mainly is we support all of the different functional labs. If we don't support a lab that's available today, these are all, just to give you a quick view, these are all of the different functional labs that we do support. And then if we don't have a lab that's on there today, the user would just select lab not listed, upload their PDF, that sends us an alert, we write the software and we turn that around within a day, reprocess the data, and then that lab is now available for everybody else in the community as well. But what we do from the display standpoint is we actually start creating what we call the client functional summary. And we're basically creating a view for all of the different aspects of the metabolic health of the individual. So we bucket them by hormone, gut, metabolic assessment, organic acids, if they're doing any environmental toxins or food sensitivities. So in the next release, we'll obviously have a blood chemistry. All of this information is basically what we're doing is we're pulling out the functional ranges and highlighting the key values of interest. So for example, if anybody's familiar with the Dutch test, and this is my Dutch test, it's actually a 14-page document of a bunch of different information. Some of it is very useful, and some of it is dead down the middle, right in the middle of the reference and functional ranges, and doesn't need to be looked at. But for me, I'm actually on the estrogen dominant side. And so what you see, and apologies if you're not familiar with it, is all of the estrogen metabolite pathways are actually elevated or in the high range. And so for me, if you remember when I started out, is, the recommendation for me was based upon my energy level was to supplement with testosterone. Well, testosterone was perfectly fine for me. My issue, it was not related to that. And it actually probably would have driven the imbalance towards estrogen in the wrong direction. And so what we do is we take this information and we actually pull out and we actually highlight what the important aspects are. So for my hormone health, I have just my estrogen metabolites, which are highlighted, my cortisol and cortisone patterns, whether their relative is abnormal, it should follow normal patterns. So which parts of the day are out. This is my gut health. So we do both what's high and also detected or below the thresholds. So really we're taking what's a lot of information or giving the user a single snapshot view. And to the future state of really where we're taking the technology is we'll be able to connect the dots between the different tests to really drive the insights and interventions that affect the user the best.
That's amazing.
And then the last part that we do is we do have supplement protocols. So for those users who do have a clinician or a practitioner who are giving them supplement protocols, we have the ability to store here. This helps just give some visibility as to seeing what supplements you're taking when. You can also, if their practitioner is using our platform, they have the ability to enter all of their different links. So this is like a full script link or Amazon or wherever they're getting it. So they have all of their information consolidated in a single view. A lot of times, we start out taking these nutritional supplements and then we kind of forget what's when, where, and what am I supposed to take. So we actually summarize that for the individual in basically highlighting which supplements you're going to be taking when. So upon rising or with breakfast, mid-morning, so on and so forth. So if I can't remember, if I'm in the office, I have my, my bag of supplements. Oh my God, what am I supposed to take before lunch, before running my next meeting? I have a quick snapshot just as a reminder as to what I need to do when.
Yeah, this is awesome. Alrighty. So if people listening are anything like me, they're thinking, oh my God, how do I get my hands on this?
Yeah.
So tell us.
Yeah. So today we're actually rolling this out directly to users who want to use it. We're creating a sign-up list for those individuals. We do want to kind of get people up to speed on an individualized basis. So we actually set up a sign-up form for your community who wants to join and use this platform. It's at Biocanic, so BIOCANIC.com/Rosie. And that will be, you'll just sign up and we'll just start slowly adding people on. We want to make sure that it makes sense and everybody gets the platform set up and using for them. We're really excited to have everybody who wants to come on board. And, you know, as a kind of an agile software team that's really passionate about the space, we really enjoy user feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. Where do we need to go next? Do we need to add more information? Is something confusing? We're really engaging with our clients. We want to make this the best possible experience to really empower patients to be at their optimum health and wellness and really drive those optimum outcomes.
Well, I think this is fantastic. I would love it if over time, as we get members of the community engaged with this awesome tool, we could actually have a focus group that that the Rosies could come together and give you some feedback and kind of give you insight on what it's like as a user, not as a practitioner, using this platform, and really serve to kind of lift the boats together. I really see how this can make a really big difference in people's healing journeys, and really collectively allow us to contribute to other people figuring out what's wrong with them and how they're going to get help faster. So I'm excited that you invited us to be part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, we're all about empowering the individual to getting to their right desired health and wellness outcome, whatever that is. And a lot of times it can be overwhelming, especially if you have brain fog, leaky gut, to remember exactly what all your information is, or what was important, or what you have tested, especially when you've only got 10 minutes with your primary care and you're asking them to do something. So really, we hope that this really empowers the individual to really get the results that they're after and the things that they need from their support community.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited for you to get the functional lab ranges added, because I love that. I was just talking to someone in a private message yesterday where we were talking about the ranges, and we were talking about free T3 thyroid, and she was like, well, it says on here that the thyroid range is 2.0 to whatever the top end number was. It's very different than the functional range for thyroid, which typically is 3.0 to 4.2, depending on the lab and the reference range on that lab. But, you know, to me, that's what's truly, truly empowering to us as women who are trying to figure this journey out, is knowing not am I in a severely advanced disease state, but how do I compare to where I should be for the very best health of my life? So this is exciting. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And I hope everyone will go to biocanic.com/Rosie and sign up and give this a whirl. And maybe we'll get together, those of you that choose to participate, and do a little follow-up with Jeremy and let him know how this is working out for us.
Yep. Great.
All
Thank
right.
you. I appreciate it, Misty.
Of course. I love it. All right, you guys, take advantage. We'll talk to you soon, Jeremy.